Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. In the arid region of the Kalahari in South Africa, we see the peaceful indigenous people known as the Bushmen. They live harmoniously in the region and have adapted remarkably well to the hostile environment, which is also teeming with wild animals. This tribe lives completely isolated from the rest of the world, with no worries or concerns about anything. However, they have no knowledge of what is happening near their territory, such as a war being fought on the outskirts of their land and the presence of illegal elephant hunters coming and going. We are introduced to Ann Taylor, a successful lawyer from the bustling city of New York. She is informed by her assistant that the CEO of the law firm won't be able to attend the project conference, for which she has done most of the work, and is not happy about this, but she has no choice but to go herself. The conference is taking place in Okakara, South Africa. Meanwhile, among the Bushmen, a group is returning home after collecting some fruits native to the region. The group's leader, Kikso, notices the tracks of a sick elephant. He instructs his eldest daughter, Kisa, to take her younger brother, Kiri, home while he and the others search for the ailing elephant. On their way back, Kisa notices something she has never seen before: tire tracks. To her, they resemble the footprints of a large, unfamiliar animal, piquing her curiosity. She decides to follow these unusual tracks to see what kind of creature they lead to. As they venture further, they encounter something completely new to them and approach it with great curiosity. Kiri sees water dripping from a reservoir and is amazed, so Kisa climbs up to take a look. Kiri follows suit, and they are astounded by the sight of so much water in that place. Suddenly, the illegal hunter, the truck's driver, wakes up and starts the engine without realizing the two children are on top of the water tank. Kisa and Kiri attempt to climb down, but they become scared due to the large wheels that could easily crush them. They quickly climb back up and are taken in an unknown direction. Meanwhile, their father and the others discover the dead elephant, with evidence showing that white men had been there. Kikso is the only one who has had an encounter with and knowledge of civilized men, but he doesn't understand why they killed the elephant and took only its tusks, leaving the meat to rot. They decide to gather some men from their tribe and a neighboring tribe to collect the meat and distribute it, splitting up for the task. As Kisa and Kiri struggle to hold on inside the hunter's truck, they climb into the cargo area and discover many elephant tusks. On their way back home, Kikso realizes that his children's footprints have disappeared, indicating that they climbed onto something strange left behind by the white men. He instructs the young man who accompanied him to return to the village and inform everyone about the elephant, while he himself goes in search of Kisa and Kiri. At a distance from Kikso's tribe, and has already arrived at the location and is preparing some details for her presentation. Jack, a local guide, suggests that he can show her all of Africa in half an hour using his mini glider plane, which would take hours by bus. As Ann needs to be ready for her presentation at 3:30 p.m., she reluctantly agrees to go with him. While Kisa and Kiri wait for the truck to stop so they can climb down, the hunter, the truck's owner, wakes up and instructs his assistant to go to sleep while he takes over driving for a while. As they switch positions, with the vehicle almost at a standstill, Kisa and Kiri prepare to climb down. However, Kiri becomes scared and doesn't manage to do it in time, and the truck quickly starts moving again. Kisa is forced to climb back up to avoid leaving her brother alone there. Ann and Jack make a brief landing for Jack to pick up something from a man who arrives in a car camouflaged with bushes. The man is Stephen, a zoologist. When Jack is about to return to the glider, the base chief contacts him on the car radio and asks him to bring Jack along because they have found a sick baby giraffe and need his help. Since the glider can only accommodate 2 people, Stephen has to go with them while Jack stays behind. After they depart, the base chief contacts them again, informing Stephen that they should wait due to an approaching strong turbulence. However, Jack insists that it's too late as they have already left. Before long, they are caught in a fierce storm, losing control of the glider and being carried high up, almost hitting rocks on a mountain. When the storm passes, they realize that the glider has run out of fuel and they are gliding at a high altitude. To descend, Stephen uses a little whiskey he had under the seat, and the engines start again, allowing them to maneuver and prepare for a landing. However, a strong gust of wind in the region pushes them backward, leaving them stranded on top of a tree. Stephen prepares a rope and manages to climb down from the tall tree. He then assists and in descending as well. Down on the ground, he realizes they are far from the base since the animals show no fear of them, indicating an area that has had little contact with civilization. And expresses concern about the wild animals in the area and asks Stephen to throw her the rope so she can climb up. However, Stephen assures her that as long as she doesn't provoke them, they won't harm her. When she sees a hyena nearby looking at her, she quickly realizes that she can easily climb a tree without the help of ropes. She asks to be lowered down on the rope, and after having a little trouble during the descent, she gets irritated and says she needs to urinate. However, as she approaches the bushes, she is startled by a baby rhinoceros. She doesn't run because she remembers Stephen's words that if she doesn't bother the animals, they won't bother her. Just then, the mother rhinoceros charges at and, perceiving her as a threat to her baby. Stephen, witnessing the scene, becomes extremely anxious and tells her to run. And runs as fast as she can and quickly climbs a thin tree, luckily escaping the ferocious attack. Once the animal is gone, she comes down and drinks some beer to quench her thirst. In the hunter's truck, Kisa realizes that it's not easy to climb back up, even with her brother there to help her. Meanwhile, their father tirelessly follows their tracks, determined to find them. Finally, Kisa manages to climb back up and tries to find something to pull her brother up. Stephen realizes they need to find food before it gets dark and remembers seeing an ostrich nest nearby. However, they need to distract the male ostrich guarding the nest. He comes up with the crazy idea of using it disguised as an ostrich to get his attention while he takes an egg. The plan initially goes well, but soon the male ostrich spots Stephen and chases after him. To protect himself, Stephen lies on the ground and the ostrich steps on him. Then, a small monkey tries to grab one of the ostrich eggs, causing the ostrich to run after it. Stephen takes the opportunity to leave with the egg he managed to grab. Back in the truck, innocently, Kisa grabs a rifle to help her brother climb up and narrowly avoids getting shot. This almost draws the attention of the hunters in the front of the truck. Kisa returns, this time with an antelope skull, and finally manages to get her brother out of there. However, they still can't climb down because the truck is in motion. After cooking the ostrich egg on a fire buried in the sand, Stephen and Ann hear the news of their disappearance on the radio, hoping that they are in a location where they can be rescued by search parties. It's getting dark, and the boys are still trapped in the truck, while their determined father tirelessly follows their track. Stephen tells them that the hyena circling nearby is cowardly and may attack. He instructs her to stay awake for the first shift while he sleeps, and then they'll switch. As the day dawns, the determined Kikso continues his journey to find his children, who spent the night sleeping inside a tire in the truck's cargo area, covered with animal hides. Stephen finally manages to descend completely with the glider, and after eating the remaining ostrich egg, they continue, dragging the glider to a flatter area where they can take off. And goes ahead, dragging the mini-plane with a rope, while Stephen helps by carrying the rear part. Suddenly, a male rhinoceros appears from behind a bush, and Ann runs in fear, quickly climbing a tree while still holding onto the plane. Stephen assures her that the rhinoceros is male and won't attack. He tries to see if the glider was damaged by the impact and unintentionally steps on a badger hiding there. Unable to catch it, the badger goes to bite the glider's tire, puncturing it. Stephen grabs the badger, but it's too late. He needs to get rid of the animal, but he knows that if he releases it there, it will chase him for revenge. So he uses the boot he stepped on it with to try to distract it, and the furious badger bites the boot. Once they are in a flat area, Stephen tries to make the plane take off but realizes it won't work due to the punctured tire. He removes one of the seats and breaks the floor to create a path where he can run while holding the glider from the side with the punctured tire. He gives instructions to Ann to make it ascend while he runs. Initially, it goes well, but soon things get out of control, and Stephen can't hold on, falling behind while Ann flies with no idea how to bring the glider down. It continues to drift uncontrollably, moving further away from its intended direction. In the meantime, as Kikso continues to run in an unwavering determination to reach his children, he sees the out-of-control glider and rushes toward it. Unaware of the danger, Ann flies over a convoy of military vehicles, which, mistaking her for an enemy attack, prepare to shoot her down. But Ann moves away before they can fire. She notices the power on and power off buttons and decides to turn off the engines, causing the mini-plane to glide. Then, she presses another button labeled ballistic parachute. As a result, the glider starts descending and luckily lands softly without touching the ground, with the parachute tangled in a tree. Meanwhile, Stephen walks through the scorching desert, with the exhausted badger still clinging to his boot. He reaches the spot where he parted ways with and retrieves some items, and places a piece of cooked ostrich egg on the ground with a bit of beer on top. As the badger goes to eat, Stephen quickly runs away to escape the creature, which immediately chases after him. The journey is going smoothly with Anne and the native on the bicycle until they suddenly find themselves in the middle of an angry elephant herd. The two quickly climb a tree to escape. After the animals leave, they climb down, and the native takes his now ruined bicycle, carries it on his shoulders, and leaves. Before Anne departs, she compensates him for the damage and continues on her way, not knowing where she is heading. Stephen continues walking through the scorching desert, with the badger still clinging to his boot, but it's now exhausted and lies down in the shade of Stephen. Seeing that the animal won't stop following him and is almost dying of exhaustion, Stephen carries it in his arms. When they finally reach a park with trees, they stop to rest. Two soldiers from opposing forces happen to encounter each other in the middle of the savannah. The native soldier, defending those borders, seeing an enemy nearby, throws himself from the car to the ground to avoid being shot. It works, as he would have been right in the enemy's crosshairs. They hide from each other behind the bushes, but are surprised when they catch a glimpse of each other and quickly hide again, shooting at each other. Kixo, passing nearby, hears the gunfire and unaware of the danger, goes to see what's happening. The native soldier spots Kixo and tries to get her to leave, as it's dangerous. However, he is then captured by the Spanish enemy soldier. Ignoring Kixo, the Spanish soldier orders the native soldier to take him to his jeep and makes him run in front of the car towards the north, as he is lost in the area, while Kixo runs after them. In that moment, Kisa and Kiri are on top of the truck picking fruits from the trees along the way. Suddenly, Kisa is surprised by a branch and falls off the truck, leaving her brother desperate as the truck drives away. He runs after it but can't catch up and falls far behind. And, walking aimlessly, luckily sees the first signs of civilization and comes across a windmill. She climbs it to get water, but by the time she descends, the water has stopped flowing. She finds an old can and places it where the water drips, climbs up again, and turns the mill. However, she is frustrated to find that the water fills the can. She props it up with a stone and climbs again to turn the mill, while a monkey watches. This time it works, and the water stays in the can, but the monkey grabs the can and drinks the water. And takes the empty can from the monkey and puts it back in place to climb up again, but this time she grabs some stones to throw at the monkey if it tries to take her water again. She fills the can, and the monkey approaches to drink again. And throws a stone but misses and doesn't have the courage to throw another. The monkey drinks the water again and plays with the empty can. She puts the can back in place, only to find several other monkeys approaching, which annoys her. But she is soon surprised as water starts flowing from the pipe, as the wind picks up and now she can drink and even bathe. Meanwhile, the native soldier manages to evade the enemy soldier's aim between the bushes and eventually turns the tables in his favor, making the enemy soldier retreat. And, back on her aimless journey, stumbles upon the tracks left by the truck carrying Kixo's children. Assuming it to be a vehicle with tourists, she decides to sit by the tracks and wait for them to pass by and take her away. Just then, Kixo finds her there. He greets her and wonders how she ended up there, but Anne doesn't understand anything he says. He points in a direction, indicating that they should go that way, and she follows him. He talks about his children on the truck, but seeing that Anne doesn't understand, and feeling tired, he sits down on the ground. Suddenly, they see the two enemy soldiers, one making the other run in front of the jeep. Anne thinks they are her ride out of there and goes to join them, along with Kixo. However, she is surprised when the Spanish soldier uses her as a shield to try to escape from his enemy. Kixo, needing to find his children, says goodbye to Anne and continues on his search. She tells him she doesn't want to get involved in the soldiers' war. The soldier in the jeep holsters his weapon and drives away, making the other soldier chase him for a moment. The native soldier stops the jeep and the other soldier tries to return to using Anne as a shield. Instead, he gets hit in the face with a bag full of stones. The native soldier then moves in to capture him, but Anne, furious with the situation, also hits him with her bag, leaving both soldiers dazed. Finally, the Cuban soldier is captured again and says he just wants to go home. Anne leaves angrily. Meanwhile, Stephen rests and wonders where Anne ended up. He doesn't notice a scorpion approaching his foot, and when he stands up, he is stung, causing him great pain. At that moment, the illegal hunters realize they were going in the wrong direction and stop the truck to correct their course. It is then that Carrie, seeing the truck stopped, jumps down and runs back along the tracks left by the truck to find her family. Meanwhile, Stephen also comes across the truck tracks but goes in a different direction and, exhausted, eventually collapses in a dune. Carrie is running and sees hyena tracks, knowing they are recent and that the wind is in her favor, which means she will be detected by the hyena. She continues running as fast as she can. The hyena almost catches up to her, but Carrie remembers her father's words about hyenas being afraid of something bigger than them. She grabs a piece of wood and holds it above her head to appear larger than the hyena, which stops and doesn't attack her but continues to follow. Kixo, in his pursuit of his children, sees Stephen's tracks and realizes that he's not well. He decides to find him and help him. He finds Stephen and takes him under a tree, then starts digging. Meanwhile, Anne and the soldiers take the jeep and continue forward, trying to escape. They stop where the Cuban soldiers' jeep is parked and get out to take gasoline, as their own is running low. Even with the extra gasoline, they estimate they can only drive for about 20 kilometers. The native soldiers' base is over 60 kilometers away, while the Cuban soldiers' base is only about 20 kilometers away. They start arguing, and Anne takes the opportunity to grab the weapon and forces them to go back to where they started to find her plane. Carrie continues running back along the truck tracks when she is surprised by the truck itself, which is now returning to where they started deviating from their route. The hunters see Carrie up ahead but can't brake in time, and they run over her. Fortunately, she manages to pass underneath unharmed, and the assistant hunter is relieved to see that she's alive. However, Carrie broke the piece of wood she was using, so the hyena, realizing she is smaller, starts running after her. She climbs a large rock formation, and the hyena can't reach her there. Further ahead, Kisa comes running and comes across the truck. She almost gets run over but narrowly avoids it. Now she doesn't know what to do because she doesn't know if her brother was left behind or is still on the truck. After taking care of Stephen, Kixo hears a vehicle sound and quickly goes towards it. He encounters Anne and the soldiers. Kixo tries to explain that he found another white man who was in bad shape, and he leads them to him. Anne, upon seeing that it's Stephen, gets out of the jeep and tells the soldiers to hold hands and move away. Seeing that Stephen will be fine, Kixo says goodbye and continues his search for his children. He doesn't go far before he sees the returning truck. He tries to stop it but fails. Kixo runs faster, manages to climb onto the truck, and looks for his children. However, not finding them in the back, he suddenly appears in front of them, which startles the hunters, causing them to brake abruptly. Kixo falls and almost gets run over but luckily slips through the tires. The hunters stop, and one of them goes to check if Kixo is dead. Kixo tries to ask if they saw his children, but through the radio, the chief hunter receives an order not to let the native go because he saw the elephant tusks in the truck bed. The hunter then tries to intimidate him with his weapon, but Kixo takes the gun instead. Seeing this, the chief hunter jumps on him and instructs his henchmen to fetch a rope to tie him up. They throw him into the truck. And Stephen and the soldiers arrive at a place that Anne believes is where she encountered the native before. Just as the truck is about to pass by them, the hunters, mistaking them for forest rangers, assume a halt. Anne asks them to stop, and they do, so she requests a loaned pump. Suddenly, Kixo jumps from behind the truck, still tied up, and Anne asks why they did that to him. The chief hunter quickly gets off the truck and takes Anne hostage. He then orders everyone to get into the jeep to be tied up. At that moment, Carrie is hiding from the hyena on top of a rock formation, but the animal is watching him, waiting for him to come down. After they are tied up, the chief hunter tries to contact his boss to know what to do with the prisoners, but the radio is out of range again. He decides to climb a hill in an attempt to establish contact and find out what to do with them. He leaves his henchmen in charge, keeping watch over Anne and the others. However, he is completely clumsy, and while trying to retrieve the gun from his pants, it slips and accidentally discharges, shooting himself in the foot. Stephen and Anne seize the opportunity and take his weapon, and everyone prepares to get into the jeep and escape. However, even the chief hunter admits that he will come along, as his boss will kill him if he doesn't, and he jumps into the jeep along with Kixo. But they don't even go 5 meters before the jeep abruptly stops due to lack of fuel. They hastily get out and start running, still tied up. The chief hunter, now on top of the hill, sees them fleeing and shouts furiously for his henchman, who hurries to escape. Things become even more difficult as the hunter starts shooting at them from the hill, and they run, increasingly desperate, as fast as they can. Unable to hit them, the hunter descends the hill and begins chasing them on foot. Seeing that they have entered the dry bush, he spreads gasoline and sets it on fire to eliminate them all. The fire rapidly advances toward them, also scaring away the wild animals. Suddenly, a frightened pack of lions advances toward the chief hunter, who runs to take refuge in the water reservoir he had released from his truck. And the others are exhausted from running away from the approaching fire. Kixo tries to do something and, freeing himself from the ropes, knocks everyone down to make them stand still. He grabs a burning stick and sets fire to the area they were running toward, ensuring that the fire moves in that direction. This way, as the fire he started advances, they can step on the burned ground, and the fire behind them has no fuel to continue advancing, thus saving them all. Now crying, Kixo asks again if the hunters saw his children, and he confirms that they stayed behind on the path and points in their direction. Kixo bids farewell to everyone and goes to find them. At that moment, the chief hunter is cornered on top of the reservoir with several lions waiting below, ready to attack him. Then he spots Stephen and the two soldiers approaching from afar. He cautiously descends, grabs his rifle, and climbs back onto the reservoir. Stephen and the others realize that he is armed and quickly take cover behind trees, although the soldiers fumble in the process. Stephen devises a plan and asks the soldiers to run again, pretending to be mad, to distract the hunter. They do so, and the hunter fires his weapon but fails to hit a moving target. The gunshot scares off all the lions, and just as the hunter is about to shoot again, Stephen surprises him from behind and subdues him. Meanwhile, Kisa finally finds Kiri's tracks and follows them while calling out to him. Hearing her voice, Kiri responds, indicating his whereabouts. Kisa eventually finds him, scaring away the hyena. Seeing his sister, Kiri jumps on her, and the two of them emotionally embrace, crying happily for being reunited. And Stephen received help from the native soldier with his jeep and managed to take off in the glider, finally leaving the area. After assisting and Stephen, the native soldier returns and directs the Cuban soldier on the route he should take to find his jeep and return to his base. Later, they take the two illegal hunters into custody. As for Stephen and they finally reach the safari base and deploy the parachute to land. However, Anne slips through a hole in the floor and finds herself in an embarrassing situation in front of everyone watching their arrival. But after safely landing, everyone sees them kissing, and Stephen pulls the tarpaulin again to cover them. The film concludes with Kixo finally reaching his children. Seeing them from a distance, he runs to embrace them, crying tears of joy for being reunited once again.